sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today and get your free wire stand with the purchase of a ProPure Big Water Filtration System. Or call 1-888-253-3139.
Hi, I'm Dr. Edward Group. It took me 20 years of searching the globe to find the deposit of the highest purity iodine available. The new Survival Shield X2 is mined from 7,000 to 10,000 feet below the earth in pristine, environmentally clean conditions. The iodine crystals we use are extracted from an ancient 300 million plus year old deposit deep in the earth. It's the strongest nascent iodine on the market today. It delivers 650 micrograms per drop. Experience the new formula. Experience the ancient purity. Shield your family. Survival Shield X2. Available now at InfoWarsLife.com.
X2 from InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. Alex Jones here for Infowars.com. In the month of July, we have got giant specials on everything at MadeIn1776.com. You already discounted Made in 1776 t-shirts are only $17.76. We have the new belt buckles that in only 2 weeks of sale are very close to selling out. There's only 500 of each. We're talking about Made in America belt buckles in nickeled brass. This is more than a summer blowout special. This is a new declaration of independence. But to expand the InfoWar, we're offering the equivalent of more than 5 months free right now when you get a membership at PrisonPlanet.tv for a limited time, only $39.95 a year. That's more than 5 months free off the regular price. Not just this July 4th weekend, but the entire month of July at MadeIn1776.com. Molon Labe, you can take my gun from my cold, dead hands.
The Alex Jones Show, because there is a war on for your mind.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight in Austin. I'm going to be joined in the next hour with Jakari Jackson, who's in Murrieta, California, at the site of these protests against the collapsed borders that are happening there. And of course, it just broke in the news today that Obama is giving paid leave to the ICE agents in that area. Told them, just go away. We'll keep paying you, just don't do anything. If that isn't clear that this is about a planned takedown of the borders, I don't know what is. But we're going to have updates on what's going on there as I talk to people in the area. And I guess we kind of need to ask ourselves, why is it that the mass of the population is not really catching on to what's going on? What we have going on here is we've got a collapse at the border. It'll be an economic collapse. We also have a plan to make the country essentially blue. They want to bring in people that they can rebuild their socialist state with. So that's the other aspect of it. But then there's a third aspect of it, and that's who we're going to be talking to in the next hour as well, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Both he and I have talked about how Petraeus and Pelosi have said this is part of NAFTA. NAFTA was passed 20 years ago, as Petraeus pointed out, and now it is going to be made an accomplished fact. The North American Union is what comes after North America. When he made that statement, when that was part of the question that was coming up on the discussion panel, as a UK paper was live blogging it, the guy said, the question is, what comes after America? And he goes, I didn't really know America is dead. That's right. Most Americans don't know that either because they're not paying attention. There's an article that came up yesterday, Steve Watson on InfoWars. A study says that people would rather electrocute themselves than think for 15 minutes alone. 15 minutes without some kind of stimulus, without watching moving pictures on television, without listening to something, was driving them to such a state of distraction that they would rather shock themselves. And it was a significant shock. When they applied this to the people initially, it was unpleasant enough that they said they would pay $5 not to have it happen again. And yet, many of those people did it to themselves because they could not stand to be alone with their thoughts, to think about what's going on in their lives, in their family, in their country, whatever. That, I think, is really the problem that is at the bottom of this. We're going to take your calls. I want to put this out here. The 800 number is 800-259-9231. I want to take calls from law enforcement and people who are in relief agencies. I want to hear from you as to what you're seeing here as this border collapses. Again, that's law enforcement and relief agents. That's 800-259-9231. Before I take your calls, however, I want to tell you that this hour is brought to you by MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com is the home of the Patriot Pantry line of emergency food storage. It's delicious, nutritious, and it prepares in minutes. Patriot Pantry offers amazing variety, great taste, and is packaged to last up to 25 years. Visit MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex today to experience their top-rated customer service, top-quality products, incredibly reasonable prices, the products you need, the service you expect, the price you can afford. Visit MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex today or call 1-800-1866-229-0927. That number again is 866-229-0927. MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex. Before I go to your calls on immigration, I wanted to cover one other thing that's come out in the last couple of days, because the surveillance state, the ever-present surveillance state, is one of the things that puts us in ever-present danger. And of course, as we reflect on the fact that they passed NAFTA 20 years ago, but they let it just simmer there, simmer in people's minds before they made it an accomplished fact, we should be very, very concerned about what's going on with the NSA. This is something that's been going on for quite a long time. Alex has been talking to people about this for quite a long time, but now we see a lot of information coming out about it. Is this really preparing people for the coming crackdown? Are we going to see something analogous to what's happening with the border collapse, with the establishment of NAFTA as a fact? Are we going to see that they're going to use this in new and novel ways? Oh, of course, we've already had the NDA pass. We've already had them say that they believe that the entire world, including America, is at a state of war, and so the U.S. military can drag anybody off the street without telling anyone. They can hold you indefinitely, no trial, no due process, and no information about where you went. Essentially like Argentina. Do you remember the disappeared in Argentina? Do you remember that military junta there? They just picked people up and they just disappeared. Women were showing up to protest in tears about where their husbands were, where their sons were. And of course, later they found out they were just putting them in helicopters and flying them out over the ocean and shoving them out of the helicopters. This is something we need to always be concerned about. But look at the latest revelation from the NSA. Of course, this is an article that came up yesterday, what your startlingly intimate voyeuristic NSA file looks like. A few days ago, we asked a simple rhetorical question, are you being targeted by the NSA? Well, let's take a look at some of the information that they're collecting on people. According to the Washington Post, files on intercepted Americans have a startlingly intimate, even voyeuristic quality. They tell stories of love and heartbreak, of illicit sexual liaisons, of mental health crises, of political and religious conversions, financial anxieties, disappointed hopes. Listen to some of the voyeuristic stuff that they're collecting. They get resumes from job hunters, academic transcripts of school children. You have a young girl in a religious dress in front of a mosque, or scores of pictures that show infants and toddlers in bathtubs or on swings, sprawled on their backs, being kissed by their mothers. In some photos, men show off their physiques. In others, women model lingerie, leaning suggestively into the web camera or posing risque poses in shorts and bikini tops. This is what the NSA is collecting. It's not your metadata. It's not your PIN data. They're collecting everything. And of course, what are they doing with that? Are they blackmailing powerful men? Are they blackmailing Supreme Court justices and others? You know, there was a story a few years ago about J. Edgar Hoover on The Guardian as the movie from Clint Eastwood came out, and they had an interesting quote from Harry Truman. He wrote about J. Edgar Hoover, and he said, "We don't want Gestapo or secret police. The FBI is tending in that direction. They're dabbling in sex life scandals and just plain blackmail. J. Edgar Hoover would give his right eye to take over, and all congressmen and senators are afraid of him." And I would add, presidents as well. Obviously, Truman was afraid of him as well. When we look at this, we need to understand with these NSA leaks, we need to understand the power that the NSA has. We need to understand how that kind of power has corrupted men like J. Edgar Hoover, or how I should say it draws men of the nature of J. Edgar Hoover into that position when that power is there. You know, tyranny is literally coming out of the closet. We've got the NSA now essentially channeling J. Edgar Hoover in the way that he blackmailed people. I think that is a large part of why the Supreme Court essentially reversed its trends and with a 9-0 decision last week said, no, the police must have a search warrant in order to look at people's cell phones. I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I've said many times that I believe Chief Justice Roberts was blackmailed when he wrote both sides of the Obamacare case, when he sided in a slim 5-4 majority saying that, yes, Obamacare was constitutional. It's not constitutional to mandate that kind of thing to anybody. I don't care if they call it a tax or anything else. They cannot mandate that you buy health care. That's not constitutional. They don't have the power. Under the 9th and 10th Amendment says that they haven't been explicitly given powers, then they don't have those powers. And yet we see people very selectively kicking back against it. We have an article up on Infowars.com today. Rick Warren joins leaders who are seeking religious exemptions on LGBT orders. That's right. Freedom for him, freedom for me, not for thee, essentially. This is what we see over and over again. People with a very narrow perspective who don't stand up for individual rights unless it affects them. That's what we've seen from far too many church leaders. You know, I was looking at some comments the other day. I don't remember if it was on the website or it was on YouTube. And somebody said, you know, I'm just fine. I know Jesus and I don't really worry about any of this stuff. And my response to that was, really? Really? You don't worry about what's happening to anyone else? You don't want to defend what's happening to your children? You don't want to protect them against a burgeoning police state? You don't want people spying on them? You don't have any compassion about that sort of thing? That's where the compassion needs to come from. The compassion is not creating a crisis in another country and then enticing people to endanger their children to come into this country. That's not compassion. Compassion is standing up for people in both countries and taking down the injustice that's there. If that's the way you feel, I really think you need to go back and check your religion. Is that really what Jesus called you to? I don't really know. Now, one piece of helpful news that we've seen come out of California, we see them opening up the gates to driver's licenses for people who are here illegally. And, of course, as I pointed out in the last segment, it's a very different story from Governor Brown now than it was back in 1975 when he didn't want any Vietnamese immigrants in. Maybe it was because those people tended to vote Republican. Maybe that's what it's really about. I think it is. You know, for the longest time, they've been gerrymandering with computers, picking voters here and there, jumping across rows to select the voters that they wanted in which districts. Now they're just going to massively import them so that after they collapse the economy, they will have a Democratic majority to do whatever they wish. But there is one good bit of good news that came out of California, and that is the California Assembly has voted unanimously to turn off resources to the NSA. This is a strategy that comes from the 10th Amendment Center has put together this offnow.org, and they point out that the California Assembly Public Safety Committee voted unanimously to approve a bipartisan bill which creates a mechanism to turn off all material support and assistance. They call it the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, and they said that it passed the state Senate last month by a vote of 29-1. That's pretty good. Now, if it's signed into law, it would ban the state from participating in or providing material support or resources to any federal agent engaged in the illegal and unconstitutional collection of electronic